This is an orthokeratology case where the patient is mildly undercorrected and then is also complaining of glare and halos. And we're trying to widen the optic zone on this lens to minimize those symptoms. Before getting started with this case, though, I'm going to bring up a lens from a previous case that we worked on. So these are two different patients now, right eye for both patients, but two different patients. And you can see that the prescriptions are pretty similar. But if you look at the topo demand on the left side here, our demand for this patient is about 3/4 of a diopter more than it is for this patient. And I think for this type or this range of prescription, an ideal starting point is somewhere in between. So I had initially recommended in this case to possibly decrease the topo demand. In the current case, I wouldn't be opposed to actually increasing the topo demand a little bit and to see if that might help a little bit with the undercorrection in this case. So back to this one, I'm going to bring the original lens back up. And okay, so now we have the same patient again in both windows. So with glare and halos, in order to increase the size of the optic zone, I've actually discovered that changing the OZ and the IC don't seem to help that much. And I'll kind of show you an example here. Right now we're at 6.2 and 6.8, I'm presuming. So if I dropped this all the way down to 5.2, and then this one down to 5.8, and I readjusted the curve so that we're back to the original power. And looks like that's about the closest. So we can see with the original lens, where we have this larger OZ, we're crossing 20 microns with the tear film at about 2.96 millimeters. With this new lens, we've shortened the OZ by a full millimeter, and we're crossing 20 microns at about 2.94 millimeters. So in other words, if we had started with this lens on the right, discovered the patient was getting glare and halos, and decided to increase the size of the OZ by 1 millimeter, we would gain about 0.02 millimeters in tear film underneath the 20 micron line. And so I don't change the OZ too often for the purpose of glare and halos. I haven't found it to be super helpful. Once in a while it is, and I don't know exactly when to do that. What I have found to be a little bit more effective is to add asphericity to the lens. And so let me revert back to original design, and I'll kind of show how I would normally do that. So instead of changing the size of the OZ for my patients who are complaining of glare now, I more often am adding asphericity to the center of the lens, and that's by changing the shape factor down here in the right corner. So if you click into the box, I found that most of the time you have to get up to about plus 0.2 before you really get a shift in the line. If we drop down to 0.15, you'll see that the slope shifts to the left. And at 0.2, we get a shift to the right. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said I wouldn't be opposed to increasing the topo demand in this lens, and I'm actually going to do that on the left side here. And so if we want to add, say, maybe 0.37 diopters, that'll put us at a target of 1.56. And then we'll use this as a reference as we make adjustments to this lens. So by changing or adding the shape factor in, we've also changed the topo demand. And what I want to do is match our target here, which has the new demand with the additional 37 or 0.37 diopters of power in it. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click down until we're right at about 6.53. And it looks like we can go either way. I'll go with that one. The rest of this is going to be touching up the lens. We can probably get better alignment here. So I'm going to drop this down a little bit. Then I'm just going to spin around and see how the alignment looks everywhere. That looks good. And then the final thing I'll do is check the power of the lens. So our target power of minus 1.01 here, we should be pretty close to that in most meridians, or almost all our meridians. I'm going to go around and you can see that we can be a little bit closer in some of these. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. And now it looks like we're pretty uniform going all the way around the lens. So compared to the original lens, which has the increased demand, we're crossing at about 2.85. Here we're crossing about 3.3. So we've gained about half a millimeter, or 1 millimeter in diameter for the OZ, and hopefully that'll help a little bit with the halos, add a little bit of increased topo demand to this lens, and hopefully that'll help with the undercorrection. So hope this works out well for your patient.